some questions. So we're just kind of doing a test live stream here. But here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah. Are we streaming? We're good?
We're good.
All right.
I'm watching. Right now, you got 3 people watching. They're all in this room.
Awesome. How does God define love? What does love look like? What does God's law say about love?
Yes.
And yes, we can turn to
I am all about justice.
It's in your DNA.
It is. It really is. But do you understand what justice means?
And if people don't understand what is happening right now in our culture, they need to wake up to the reality of this.
I posted why I speak out against critical race theory, and I got so much encouragement. It was like amazing. My heart, it felt so blessed. I was like, wow, I don't know if it's something.
I think that's just it, is you have to get clear on your vision. You have to get clear on your commitment, and then the Lord will help you work it out. But, you might have to. And this was a fun little experiment, and we'll see where this goes. But we thank you for joining us.
Oh my word. Wow. That was completely unexpected. Thank you so much.
Wow, Bob.
Oh, you're crying. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that was.
Yeah. Wow.
My goodness.
It's been a little journey. Well, happy 200.
I need a fan. I need air. I need something. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That's what that's not the show where I got the name Two Braids, but someone named me Two Braids because I was basically in my pajamas on our very first episode.
You just got out of the shower and
embarrassing.
Braided your hair.
So
I said,
embarrassing.
come down and do this little thing with me.
Yeah. And so I sit down, disgusted. I'm sure you could tell by the look on my face. And we start just like recording, playing around with it. And then all of a sudden, there is a person listening. Someone is watching us have this conversation that I thought was completely dumb. Why are we having this conversation? Because I'm never doing this again in my life.
We're both there in our Biola sweatshirts.
That is still my pajama sweatshirt. It was such a mess.
Oh my word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And now here we are. I call this show The Great Hoodwink and Bamboozle.
So the original idea of the show was I had this idea to do a show for about, 6 or 7 years prior to Monique living with us. And I wanted to do a show where two people who were had different backgrounds and different perspectives could talk about the Christian worldview and current events. And I just couldn't find the right dialogue partner. There was somebody that I thought might be good, but yeah, no, that didn't work out. And that was the Lord's blessing was in that. And then along came Monique and I thought, oh, this could be something, but how am I going to convince her to do it?
Yeah.
So I had Bob bring up a little studio and in the living room. And here we are. It just, what made me emotional about watching that
was me seeing me with my hair looking like that in public. That's what made me emotional.
No.
Oh, what?
We were looking rough. But just thinking about the concept that this little idea that I had so long ago and how just us setting up this very humble thing in the beginning. And we had very few viewers in the beginning and we were both new. We didn't really know what we were doing. So that was God's blessing. There weren't very many people watching it.
I still don't know what I'm doing.
But then all of a sudden came George Floyd and we had thousands and tens of thousands of people following us. And then we go on the road and people are like, oh, I listened to this podcast, that podcast. I changed churches. I started discipling my kids. I started homeschooling them. I ran for city council. Mm-hmm. I ran for the board at my local public library. Yeah. Like things that you and I just were sitting here in our living room talking about. And Bob has taught me so well in our marriage of just like sowing into something, even if it's small in the beginning and trusting the Lord for the harvest. And here we are. That's pretty crazy.
That was crazy. It was
All
crazy.
those topics and guests, and we didn't know what we were doing. So.
Yeah.
And we have another great show tonight.
We do.
We are
I'm still kind
live.
of like stunned. I'm just looking at the wrong camera. Don't mind me, y'all. I told you I show up, okay? As long as I get here, it's okay. All right. So we do have a good show.
Yeah.
Well, hold on.
Excited.
We got to stop. Okay. Welcome to All the Things. This is a show where we talk about all the things related to God, the Bible, and real life. And I am still Monique Dusan on our 200th episode.
And I'm Krista Bontrager, also known as Theology Mom. And in the beginning of the show, Monique didn't even really know what Twitter was. She didn't have a website. She didn't have anything.
Why are we talking about
So I set up a Twitter account behind her back.
She did. Y'all, I almost said a word. Irritated my spirit. Yes.
I said, you're a public figure now.
Because I had a Twitter account. The real Monique D. Worked my nerve.
Shout out to our moderators keeping the peace tonight in the chat. I saw Elaine in there and Laura and Sylvia coming in from Montana. So really quickly, we do have book clubs coming very soon. And Monique's going to be doing a book club.
We should talk about that.
Oh, The Queering of the American Child. And we've got a group going through our Walking in Unity book. And our friend Jen Beidel is going to be leading a group on Natasha Crane's new book, When Culture Hates You. So if you want to get connected to the book groups, just go to our website, centerforbiblicalunity.com, scroll down a little bit, and you're going to see a giant button that says virtual book clubs, and it will take you right there and give you all the information, days and times and books and leaders and all of that good stuff. Okay. Yes. Tonight's guests, who have been patiently waiting while we're having the opening banter here.
Yes. And if someone heard that crash in the background, we do record out of the home. So just know.
So tonight's guests are the gals from the Brave Parenting podcast, Chelsea Hetzel and Kelly Newcomb. And if you don't know them, you're going to want to start following them by the end of the show, because they're doing a unique and amazing ministry, and we can't wait to introduce them to you. So,
yeah, I was going to say they're asking the question, but also giving the answer on how should Christians use social media differently?
Or any media.
Yeah. Any media. Should we be using it differently? Should we be using it at all? But then I think they're really offering parents a different alternative when it comes to things like screen time and media in, the lives of their kids. And so there's so much information, misinformation, distraction, other things, being words that rhyme with corn on the internet and at your kids, fingertips. And so how do we really protect our children? And if you're someone like me, who's an aunt and not a mom, how do you still work alongside parents to protect the kids who you love?
Also teachers, educators, grandparents.
Yes.
Sunday school teachers, kidmin pastors, anyone that is an influencer of a child. This is an important conversation, but it's also an important conversation for the Christian, because we're going to be talking about even discipling our own souls and how does technology work into that. I know I focused in the thumbnail about parenting, but I want us to understand that this is more than just a parenting conversation.
I didn't get that part. I didn't get that memo. So I'm showing up, y'all. I'm here. I'm trying to make it work. 200.
All right. So with that, let's bring on our friends, Kelly and Chelsea. Okay, well, why don't you start by giving us a little short intro about your origin story, how you got into this ministry, and letting us get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So Brave Parenting exists to provide a biblical approach to media and technology. We know that foremost, parents are the ones who are on the front lines trying to disciple and shepherd their kids as they are being raised in a work culture saturated with media and technology. So primarily we focus on parents, but we know that that's hard work and they can't necessarily do that alone. So we try and bring in and also help educate the community. That is the church, the entire body of Christ that every parent's connected to, hopefully every Christian parent's connected to, as well as grandparents. What they do matters, as well as the schools, neighbors, all of their friends. And so it does become a very more encompassing type of mission than just parents. Now, we started Brave Parenting 10 years ago. My husband and I have 7 children who are all adopted out of foster care. And as we brought them all into our home, we very quickly realized that the allure and all of the temptation of the screens, it really kind of hindered all of our ability to disciple them, to shepherd them. We went through a series of events, crazy events, where our oldest had gotten onto Facebook and developed a relationship with a man that she ran away from and was almost trafficked from him. We had another daughter who was being asked for nudes. And this is all in like 2013, 2014, 2015. Our kids, our other boys were really fighting the constant desire for online video games. We had burner phones coming into our home when we wouldn't allow them to have smartphones. And all of it, I just kept saying, man, this is crazy. Aren't parents talking about this? We really need to be talking about this as parents, saying, do you know what your kids are doing? And no one seemed to have any idea. So I just started that conversation. Chelsea and I were in Colorado kind of with our mentoring discipleship group of women. And I was lamenting so much about it that they said, you just need to make this your ministry. This is something that God has laid on your heart and it just needs to become something. So in the beginning, I just thought, if I can just get parents to start talking about it, like being honest about what's happening on these phones, then great. Maybe I can get them to delay access to social media. Maybe, they can take the kids' phones away at night. And so we had this very broad approach. And we spoke at a lot of public schools. But what we found was the heart is not changed just by someone coming in and speaking at a school. The heart is changed by the gospel. And if we could not meet them at the level of the authority of Scripture in order to change their habits and behavior as they modeled what it should look like to engage with media and technology in a healthy and holy way, well, then we just weren't convincing anybody. No one was willing to change their habits. No one was willing to change what their allowances were for their kids. And so about 5 years in, about 2000, right around COVID time, we decided to make it a complete biblical approach. And so that's when I went back to school, really, and got my master's degree in biblical theology. Chelsea was just graduating from her bachelor's degree in biblical counseling, and she became an ACBC certified biblical counselor. And so that obviously helped us a lot in the ministry as well, take this very more biblical approach than sort of a broad approach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's great. I think that sometimes the vision that we have for our ministry at the beginning, God has another plan. I mean, I know that was true for us as well. What we thought we were doing in the beginning with a little podcast turned into something else altogether, and a full ministry. And we didn't go set out to do that. So, things can definitely evolve.
You've mentioned, one, I wanted to ask Chelsea if there was anything you wanted to add or say about yourself. I don't know if you're married. I don't know if you want to tell us if you're married. I don't. Great, you can hang with me on the singles couch. Okay, we can hang out together. Tell us what you would like.
Yeah. Now, Monique, I sympathize with the hoodwink and the bamboozle because that's kind of how it started out for Kelly and I. I was there that day in Colorado, and just telling her, like, this is what you need to be talking about. And somehow I got roped into it, and I don't actually know how that happened, but I did. Kelly and Ryan also were massive influences on my husband and I because they had adopted 7 kids out of the foster care system. My husband and I ended up adopting as well. And so we were blessed through them in that regard as well, just modeling what it looks like to be a Christian. And it's been a blessing ever since to walk alongside Kelly and to support her in this and to help her, to pray for her, to just be with her. it's challenged me, and I'm just so thankful for it. So thankful for the friendship that we have. So if everything were to fall apart today with Brave Parenting, I am so thankful for our friendship first and foremost. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. But that hoodwink is strong, and the bamboos will come along and slap you out of nowhere.
Amen.
Right?
Thank you. I didn't want this. I did not ask for this. Thank you
No.
very much.
Not at all. Not at all. But I'll go ahead and keep the single bench. I'll keep it warm for me and my single crew over here. But that's okay. I heard you both kind of talk about a little, or maybe it's not. I don't remember who it was. Sorry, but I know Krista is over here in. I'm so sorry. I was going somewhere and then I kind of went somewhere else. I want to know more about your approach because Kelly, I think you are the one who mentioned your approach, the approach to having these conversations with parents and, like the gospel must be first. Can you tell us a little bit about the approach that you guys take in having these conversations with parents, or like how do you help Christians engage with technology or shifts in their own technological use?
Yeah, so absolutely. So our big picture approach really models what the big picture approach was of Christ. When he was getting ready to ascend to heaven, he said, "You will be my witnesses. And now go and make disciples." And so that is what we look at, is every Christian is called to be a witness for Christ. And as we are witnesses, we are also supposed to disciple. Well, again, we know that discipleship is supposed to happen in the home. So it's tremendously important how parents are witnessing to their kids for Christ. Now, if they are spending more time on social media versus their Bible, well, that witness is what the kids are going to see. If their Sabbath or their rest looks more like Netflix binging or online video gaming, well, that's going to be the worldview and sort of the faith or religion that they're going to witness and then grow up into themselves. So our approach, of course, is to bring back the importance of witnessing and discipling. So much of that has been lost, so much so that really we've just conformed to all of the convenience of media and technology. And because we've conformed to so much of the convenience, right, we've not been transformed by what God's word has to say about how we are to engage with that. And I think if we were, for example, if we were to ask everybody maybe in the online chat, how should Christians engage with media and technology? I would argue, and I would think that most people are in their heart of hearts would all kind of come to the same conclusion. And as Christians, we are all to engage less. Less would probably be the answer that we all know, but it's not the answer that we all want. And so, we can say, yeah, well, we engage with media and technology, our smartphones for 7, to 9 hours a day. But we all know that that's not all just the banking app, right? It's not all a tool. It's also streaming. It's also social media. It's also maybe games. And so that witness, whether we are parents, whether we are grandparents, whether it is the witness of, an elderly person in church who's using the Bible on their phone, but maybe an unbeliever or a seeker comes to church and they see them move from the Bible to scrolling Facebook. That witness, all of that matters. So it's not just what parents are doing, it's what the entire body of Christ is doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, I think that's so insightful and so helpful, and did prick my own heart, because sometimes you gotta pass Facebook to get to the Bible app. And so I will admit I am guilty of it. But it gives me a very good, practical basis for how are you using your phone. And if my heart is in line with the gospel and my heart is wanting to, I would say, be Christ-centered first, that would also, my screen time would also come under that. Go ahead, Krista.
First I want to let Chelsea jump in if she had anything else she wanted to add before I move on.
I think one of the biggest concerns that Kelly and I have seen over the past few years is as discipleship is being lost in the home, we see big tech wanting to fill that gap. We see them creating Bible-based RP, role-playing games. We see them creating meditation or prayer apps. Really anything that they can fill the gap and kind of take territory that belongs to parents. And that's concerning for us because not everything under the umbrella of Christian is good for these kids to be engaged in in media and technology. And so we're really concerned with the neglect of discipleship in the home right now.
Yeah. Let's talk about adults first, because one of the things I'm wondering is if we should have different ways of approaching technology, whether we're adults or whether it's children. And one of my concern, and I'm just going to state my bias up front, like this is an issue that I'm very, very passionate about, even though I don't talk about it a ton. If I could do a whole podcast on this, I probably would. This is something that really matters to me, and it's an issue that I've given a lot of personal thought to. But let's start with adults, because one of my concerns is that adults interact with technology and screens and devices from the position of having more life experience and being out there in the real world. And we know the difference between doing archery on the Wii versus archery in real life. Like these are two different things. But the way that sometimes I feel like the way that we allow our children to interact with technology, they don't have that real world experience, but they don't bring that to the experience and the interaction with technology. So I guess that's kind of my big question here is, do you think that my intuition is onto anything? Like there should be differences in how adults interact with technology versus kids? I'd just be curious as to what your thoughts are on that.
I think we'd both say yes.
Mm-hmm.
There is a big difference, and there really should be a difference with how adults are engaging with media and technology versus kids. If we just look at scripture delineates a lot of distinctions between children and adults. Children, we know their hearts are bound up in folly. We know that over and over again, we are instructed to provide them with discipline, to provide them with instruction, to lead them in the way of the Lord, to teach them the fear of God. They need that because they can't do that on their own, right? So we know that there is a big difference. And so, I mean, nowadays, 2,000 years past Christ, we know that scientifically the brain is not even fully developed until like their mid-20s. So it's really scientifically as well as scripturally, we can say there is a big difference between the youth and adults, and how they're going to engage in media technology is going to be very different. Now, we often say adults naturally use it as a tool. I would say, because I'm very intentional, I would use it primarily as a tool, not as a toy. But for kids, they don't need technology as a tool when they are 2, 5, even 7. There's not a need for that. And so it becomes a source of entertainment. It becomes a more of a toy than it is a tool. And so then we expect them to transition that toy, that source of entertainment, into a tool. Now we want them to engage differently. Now, no, you shouldn't be using this while you're working, or no, you shouldn't be having it at your bedside. But if they've gotten used to this constant entertainment or constant use, well, then it's really hard to make that distinction. So I think there's that aspect. And then I think that there's also the aspect of, because parents just don't want to change their own amount of screen time that they use, they just maybe don't want to change their own behaviors. It's just easier to give kids the same devices and allow them to be on those devices and sort of be pacified, because it makes everybody's life simpler in the short run, in the here and now. Of course, it creates long-term problems, but we just treat the kids like they're adults.
Krista, to your point about like the Wii and the archery and everything, one of the things that Kelly and I talk about in our biblical approach to media and technology seminar is like truth is under attack right now. We know that. You guys know that for sure. But one of the ways that we see truth being attacked is through distorted realities. And And while I can distinguish the difference between like archery on a Wii and archery in real life, I'm actually struggling as an adult to distinguish what's real and what's not real because of AI right now. So like I recently just got my hair cut, and as I was looking through pictures of what I wanted, I was like, I don't think that person's real. So I don't think that hairstyle is actually achievable. This is like completely like crafted, tailored perfection. And I was struggling to distinguish the two. A child is absolutely going to struggle to distinguish between the two. And it's getting harder for adults, which means it's going to be absolutely impossible for children to engage in online media and technology.
I want to go and shift over to the impact, because you guys have both hinted around at, there is a real impact on kids when they get these screens at early ages. And, I would even say all the way through, their older adolescence, especially when the brain isn't fully, finished developing until your, 20s. But what I think I hear you saying is that, especially with our little kids, the issue of screens with kids is not necessarily that they have a problem, it's that the parents may have a problem in discipling themselves and then properly discipling their children and having the proper even boundaries, being able to establish those boundaries for their kids. Am I hearing you right?
That's spot on. That is nail on the head, spot on. Yep. It's very hard to give these devices up because they satisfy what is in our hearts, and our hearts are not always bent towards good. They are sometimes bent towards evil and comfort and pleasure, and it is hard to give up those idols. I think that that is what we are fighting right now as a society. But there are multiple documented impacts on children. I mean, these have been well researched. The brain, we see impulsivity up, we see control down, we see attention problems, emotional dysregulation, and like sleep across the board, like from littles to older teens. No one's sleeping anymore. Like that is a serious concern. But as Christian parents, if we were to step back and ask the question, how does this impact my child's heart? I think we would have a different motivation because we know the science, we know the research, but it's kind of like falling on deaf ears. No one's really changing their habits. Like you can go into your pediatrician's office or to your child's, eye doctor, and you see like the pamphlets and the flyers for how it's impacting their delays, but no one's changing anything. But
Well,
what is it doing?
I want to focus on that a minute. I don't want to have you
Yeah.
get too, because this to me is the key to a lot of it, is that if we knew a parent who was feeding their child poison every day,
Yes.
and that there was all of this research about how this would have developmental delays, and this could cause the child to not develop properly and everything, we would have serious concerns. But the problem is really way bigger than that. It's that the parents are addicted
Yes.
to the constant pleasure, and so then we tell ourselves a story that it's not that bad because we're monitoring the content.
Yes.
And this is not the content is an issue, and we can put filters and regulate what streaming service they have access to and all of that. That's fine. But what I think that most Christian parents do not understand is that they're addicted to the screen,
Yeah.
and they are modeling for the child the need for constant stimulation and pleasure.
Yep.
And they are sacrificing real world conversation.
Yep.
And where my mind goes is, what is the long term impact on attachment to
Yeah.
an entire generation of children?
Yeah.
Because attachment is getting disrupted, and the brain cannot form the proper neural pathways if there isn't proper bonding. And these screens, we're not talking about in this conversation, we are not talking about simply the content.
Yep.
We are talking about how a child grows. And just like a plant, it needs sunshine and watering and proper care and feeding. So does a child and their development. But what happens when the parents are addicted to this stimulation? And then they want to pass the stimulation down to the kid, the parenting hack to keep them pacified. This is this is my opinion. The opinions of Krista do not necessarily reflect the opinions of anyone else on this panel. But this is a multi-generational wickedness that we are passing down to our children. We are harming them, and we are harming their development and the attachment and bonding between the children. Now, you can tell me I'm wrong. I'm okay with that. I'm a big girl, but this is my concern.
So, interestingly enough, my experience as a foster adoptive mom of 7 kids, they had, all of them came from addicted parents who were addicted to alcohol, parents who were addicted to drugs, and they suffered neglect, both in the biological home. They suffered neglect, being passed around in different homes and foster care. And so when I got them, what I saw was dysregulated emotions, trouble sleeping, impulsivity, no self-control. I saw, and it's actually been documented by researchers, the same symptoms that kids are now experiencing. And so it was actually hypothesized that maybe neglect, like child neglect from a parent, is actually it looks the same as neglect to a device. Yeah. So my kids who came out of foster care and suffered true neglect, not necessarily because they were given screens, because their parents just were not around. They were definitely not being parented or discipled. They were being just kind of left to themselves to raise themselves. And that immediately struck me when I read that early on, and I saw how hard my kids struggled in every single facet of life. And I could have chalked it up to just trauma, childhood trauma, everything that they went through. You know, they got separated, from their biological parents. It could just be that. But then what I have seen as the years have continued is I see so many other of their peers experience and struggle with the same exact symptoms, because that time on a screen is neglect. So you are spot on, Krista. It is exactly that. And then as I was trying to raise my kids, and that's why I wrote my first book, Managing Media, Creating Character, because I realized they wanted this media so much. And if I did not try and build character through the media by like teaching them patience when they wanted the screen, teaching them respect when I said that time limits were up and this type of thing, well, then I was never going to be able to try and reshape their character that had been so formed by neglect. And so, and if the gospel could not actually change their heart, they would still always love the screen, right? If Jesus never became better and more desirable than the screen than itself, then their heart was never going to change. And some of my kids' hearts changed and some of them didn't.
So let's go back to impacts of boys versus girls, because there is an important difference that I think we ought to highlight. Is what is the research telling us about how screens impact boys versus girls? How is it shaping their social development, their psychological well-being, emotional well-being, and that sort of a thing?
Yeah. Do you want to take the social media
Yeah.
part?
So ultimately, what we hear in the media so much is social media. We're creating new legislation around social media. We hear about all of the impacts that it has on girls, and all of that is very, very true. But what I want to highlight, and that you may not even necessarily have pinpointed yourself, but the more research I do, the more I think that this is such an important thing that parents have to recognize, is that there is very little difference between social media platforms and online video gaming. And one is affecting girls primarily, and the other one is affecting boys. But if we just put them side by side, both are online platforms where children, teenagers can engage not only with their friends, but also with strangers. They both have algorithmic feeds that have a goal of maximum engagement, that offer rewards for coming back every single day and using the app in different ways. Both of them allow for user-generated content that they can sort of get social validation or peer confirmation, just feel like they are worthy because they put something good out there. So they're very, very similar, even though they have different type of content. And so while we see that social media is grossly impacting girls, suicide rates in the past 15 years have tripled.
Yeah.
I think there was also Common Sense Media did a survey. They found that 57% of teen girls feel constantly sad and hopeless. And that's tragic.
Mm-hmm.
That's tragic. But when we think about the boys, I think it's a more delayed. The effect that online video gaming and that online world is having on them is a little more delayed. And so we think, oh, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I think unfortunately what's happened is social media and girls have gotten a bigger piece of the media pie. And for lots of reasons, girls tend and women tend to take up more space in the media, whether for good or bad. There's just more news about women in general. And what is going unnoticed and unspoken about is how there is no place for men in society. Biblical manhood is a threat to society. And so why boys are so attracted to online media or online video games is because it fulfills that desire for dominion and protection and building and cultivating and creating all the things that God created them to do. And it satisfies, it's kind of like gently scratches that itch. It doesn't satisfy, but it gently scratches that itch. And the boys are isolated, they're separated from their peers, they're not involved in society. We know that because marriage rates are declining. We know that dating is on the decline. We know that teen sex is down, but we also know then that, the rate of corn is up, right? Mm-hmm. And everyone is okay with this because there's no space for men. Biblical manhood, there's no space for it in society. So boys sit and suffer in silence. No one talks about it. And the church has got to be the place where we talk about biblical manhood being a good thing for the betterment of society.
Yeah. The boys aren't thriving.
They're not.
There's a failure to thrive. They're not going to college. I mean, the rates of girls graduating from college is so much higher.
Yeah.
The boys are still living at home, still playing video games. I mean, I know I can't even count how many 20-something-year-old girls who are like, where are all the guys?
Yes.
And they're at home playing video games.
Yep.
Before I ask my next question, I want to read a viewer's comment, and then this comment's on YouTube, but it ties into the question that I'm going to ask. And so Amanda J says, because of a Brave Parenting Media Conference we attended, my teen girls have decided they don't even want social media at this time. It was very eye-opening. And so, it's awesome to be able to think of the work that is being done and the impact that it has on, not just parents, but also on adults. And so this leads me to my next question.
Before you do that, I totally forgot we have to take a break because we had all the microphone shenanigans. Why are you looking at me like that?
Because I was just in the middle of, I was like,
I'm sorry. We'll be right back. 1 minute. Bye.
Truth and courage. Christians need a good dose of both in this current cultural moment. That's why you need to be at the 2025 Maven Conference. We are going to look at the anti-Christian culture that we're currently in and the unique challenges that it presents to us. The challenges of expressive individualism, the authority of the self, and how that dominates so much of our society. And then also critical theory, the ideas that permeate every institution. And families and students need to figure out how to navigate those challenges. So join us for the Maven Conference, and there you'll get a good dose of both truth and courage. Go to mavenconferences.com to register.
I'm glad you remembered that, because otherwise the one and only Brett Kunkel, Uncle Kunkel as we call him, would have been very upset. We just spoke at their conference last weekend.
A week ago today.
Yeah, a week ago today. I spoke on critical theory, not critical race theory, but critical theory. What is critical theory, so that we can have some insight into, how do we understand all of the critical theories that, flow from it? I'm just looking at the wrong
And
camera.
I spoke about how to maximize your puppet ministry. No, I spoke about race issues. Answering 3 questions about race and racism. Okay, all right. Now your question for the
Are you
gals.
sure?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't know. I don't want you to cut me off mid sentence again.
Sorry.
Okay. So, what are your recommendations for how much engagement children should have with screens, and how does it impact the brain development? Like, does that vary by, I would think of age and stage. So does some of that change with age and stage, or is it basically like, hey, from 2 to 13, this big chunk, they shouldn't have it?
Right. So the American Academy of Pediatrics is kind of like the gold standard. What they put out, they basically say there should be 0 screen time from 0 to 18 months, 18 months to 24 months. You're going to have like 30 minutes. The only exception to all of that is FaceTime. From 2 to 3 years, it's 30 minutes to an hour. But the most they ever hit at any age is 2 hours. So there should be nothing more than 2 hours, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics. But what we have found is, of course, when you tell parents, okay, 2 hours, well, then they give kids 2 hours. So, they ultimately go up in that. And what we know just about the natural flow of life is, you're out running errands, the kids get fussy, feisty. You want to hand over your phone, you give them a little extra screen time. There's always extra. And if they go to a public school, they're going to get a lot of screen time while they're in the classroom. And so all of that screen time adds up. And so the average screen time, if we look at just kids ages 11 to like 18, the average screen time ranges between 7.5 and 9 hours a day.
Wow.
So it's far beyond what the American Academy of Pediatrics says any child should have, which is 2 hours. So
Kelly, really quick, we're getting a question here of what's your definition of screen time? Is it watching something, playing something, scrolling, all of those things? Maybe you can just quickly clarify that.
Absolutely. That's a great question. So what we primarily mean is personal screen time.
Mm-hmm.
It's that one-on-one handheld device type of screen time, but this isn't the same as a family watching a movie together with a large television on the wall. That's a little bit different than screen time, because not only are you doing it in community, but you're also doing it in a large open space where other things can also be kind of happening and going on. The personal screen time is primarily what is being measured.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can include a lot of gaming, but it can also include a lot of streaming. It can include they call it edutainment, which is like educational games that ultimately aim to help a child read or learn math or sounds, but is basically manufactured to be a game, essentially. So that's kind of what they mean by screen time. So when they're measuring screen time, it's pretty much the personal handheld screen time. But it's hard to say. Different entities, different institutions measure that average number a little bit differently. They might include, obviously, that movie that you would watch together as a family.
Mm-hmm.
But the most concerning screen time of all is that personal screen time. I'm personally not very concerned with families watching a movie together. Again, you can talk about the content. The content, typically, for most families, you're going to choose wisely. Christian families, you're going to choose something that's age appropriate. And so it's not a matter of the content. It's more a matter of how many movies. Are you binging something all day long? Is that a regular habit of yours? But for the most part, again, you're doing that in a community. It's the personal, one-on-one, private screen time where only the child knows exactly what is happening on the screen. Not only does that impact their brain development, it develops their character. I mean, it really builds a dependency, because these apps that they're engaging with, they're not neutral. If it's YouTube, we know that if it's not YouTube Kids, we know that there are, the autoplay feature, the algorithms that are suggesting the next keeps them engaged. If it's a game like Roblox, we know that the reward mechanisms and the behavior modification techniques that they use to keep a child engaged, all of that, it changes and it shapes them. Ultimately, it's shaping their heart. It's building a dependency in their heart and a love in their heart.
I want to, a couple things there. First of all, don't trust YouTube Kids. Like we did
the same thing.
we did a whole episode
Yes.
about the LGBT algorithms that are built into YouTube Kids to radicalize them into the rainbow people. So, but I want to really hit on the brain development issue because all of those rewards that are in the games and that sort of thing, checking constantly, like how many likes do I have on this post or how much interaction have I had with it. It's the dopamine hit that you can get addicted to. And then over time, from what I understand, that can manifest if I don't get enough of a dopamine hit on a regular basis. Young people have difficulty regulating their emotions because they don't have enough real world experience, and they're breaking up with their boyfriend over a text message, and they haven't lived through. My daughter's in the other room, but she knows that this is how I feel about this. Like just the simple thing about making a phone call when I was a kid, when I wanted to call my friend, and like I had to pick up the phone, I had to talk to an adult, is so and so there? The dad might answer the phone. I noticed with my own kids, like, they're in their 20s now and hopefully they've outgrown it. But when they were younger, and it's like they were phobic of having just basic conversations with people. And I'm like, this isn't good. They do not know how to have a basic discussion with a peer or an adult. And it really concerns me because the less that we have real world interactions, how are these people going to stay married? How are these people going to navigate extremely complicated emotional issues when they've really only mostly interacted with the world through gaming and instant dopamine rewards through a game? Like I know I'm sounding really, really old right now, but this is a concern that I have of.
It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
It really is a valid concern. And so what I have seen personally with my own kids, and it's been validated by so many of the parents that I talk to, is exactly what you're getting at, is all of this dopamine, it makes them need a reward all of the time for everything that they do. And so it's like my child may say, well, you didn't say good job for, putting my dishes in the dishwasher. Well, I mean, that's just a normal expectation, right? I shouldn't have to reward you with anything for doing what is a basic, right, good, true thing to do in your home as an adult living in the home, right? But now they're so programmed to get a reward for every single thing that they do that they can't function, right? If you go to work and you show up for work, 3 days in a row, they want a reward. Hey, I've showed back up. See, in the games, they will reward you this way. The games will give you, they'll give you a streak, and they'll give you a special reward or coins or skin or whatever it is inside of this game for showing up every single day. But the real world does not do that, right? No one, you can't go to an employer and say, hey, I've got a 5-day streak. What kind of reward do I get? And while they may never say that, but that's ultimately what's going on in their mind. And so you're absolutely right. How are they going to stay married? How are they going to function? And I also want to say, I feel bad. I feel so saddened for Gen Z because I feel like they got the absolute rawest deal.
Yep.
The rawest deal ever. They were part of this great experiment of, hey, let's just put kids online and see what happens.
Yeah.
And it's tragic. And, when I talk about this, a lot of them will agree, but some of them take offense and say, that's us you're talking about. And I'm really, I feel so bad, but it's us. It was us as parents that allowed it. And so that's why.
Well, I'm so glad you said that because I'm not here to blame Gen Z. I'm here to have a conversation with my generation.
Yes.
Gen X. This responsibility lays at our doorstep. I get it. It came at us like really quickly in 2010s, but we did this.
We did.
Yeah.
And millennial parents, I want you to do better than us because that's why we're doing this ministry. That's why we're having this podcast, is we want to help millennial parents do better, because Gen Z, we did not do good. And we got a big problem. And I'm not here to blame Gen Z. I'm here to talk to Gen X and millennial parents.
Mhm.
And this is my heart. I am so grateful for all the shining lights that I am starting to see in Gen Z, having faith renewals and
Yep.
and wanting marriage and these things, but they're struggling to find partners, and I get all of that, but I'm hopeful in my heart that there will be a remnant of good that will come from Gen Z. But I got issues with my generation, and the teachers in my generation and the pastors not talking about it. I got issues, and I want to encourage millennial parents to do better, and that's why we're here.
Mhm. I don't know if
Wow.
it's an encouragement, but I am a millennial parent and she's a Gen X parent. And
Mhm.
so like this partnership that we have together is because she's noticed in her generation how things went wrong and just impressed that upon me and just encouraged me to raise my kids. I have 3 kids. I homeschooled all of them. I have homeschooled them without technology until they were in high school because I just frankly didn't want to teach algebra. So we kind of outsourced that. I kind of tapped out at 8th grade math on my own, but we did it. Like we can do it. But there's not a lot of people out there who have tried it. It is hard work to raise your kids without media and technology. It is brutal. It is a death to self.
Mhm.
We have the tattoos for it. Die daily. Like
Yeah.
because it is so incredibly hard to do this work. You have to look to Christ to be your strength, to be your wisdom, to love him more than you love the things of this world. Because like what you're saying, Krista, is so true. Like when these chicks come home to roost, what is this going to look like? How are they going to have complex, hard discussions? And I think the Bible speaks to this so clearly when Isaiah talks about idols. Those who worship idols become like them. They become like them. And so these kids are being discipled by the screen. And what are they going to become like? They're going to become like the world.
Yeah.
I-
Yeah. I would just also like to add as an encouragement, I have one of my children. I have 2 grandchildren. So I have all my kids are Gen Z. I have 2 grandchildren already. One's 7 and one is 3 months old. And it's absolutely possible. We help
Yeah.
raise my 7-year-old granddaughter, and it is 100% screen free.
Yep.
And she loves it. She doesn't ask a single time when she is here with us that for the screen. And my son, who just had a baby with his wife, which they got married at 19 as a Gen Z, and I just recently got a text and said, "Man, what you've always said about screens is just so right. I can see the baby's eyes immediately go to my phone if I get it out. Like she immediately looks at that light or she looks at the TV and she's like, and he says, I'm putting it all away." So it really
Yeah.
causes generational change.
Yeah.
I think you had, said something about that earlier, Krista, about, we've got to do something. Otherwise, this spiral is going to continue.
Mhm.
And the generational change, it needs to start now. It needs to start now. And it happens with us. And it starts with grandparents and parents all making a concerted effort to actually give kids a childhood back
Mhm.
and not just
A childhood and real world experiences. And I am here, like I said at the top, like this is something I'm passionate about. We're going to have the conversation because I want to be a disruption to parents and teachers. So I don't know. You want to get a question in?
No, I
Probably,
was
and
going to
then
actually go
because
to
I
some
got more
questions.
opinions.
Oh, you're clear.
I know.
I wanted to go to some questions that were on Facebook. I saw a couple come in.
Okay.
And we might have hit this one already, but I'm asking anyway. This is from our friend Jenny's getting inky with it. Says, does the content being consumed make a difference? Is it, i.e., sorry, I don't have my glasses on, i.e., it isn't just entertainment, but learning and understanding? So does the
Mm.
content make a difference?
Well, certainly the content does make a difference. I mean, if you are doing, for example, Elizabeth Urbanowitz and Foundation Worldview, biblical curriculum, well, then that's very different. And the way that it's designed is not designed to be addictive. But just because something has Christian label on it, or just because something is Bible based, like I know that there's a Bible based gaming program platform, but they also say we provide countless hours of entertainment, of Bible-based entertainment. That should concern us. That content, while it may be biblical, doesn't necessarily mean that a lot of it is good. And all of that content that you might find in a Bible-based game, all of that, every single piece of that can be provided by the parent in a discipleship relationship. It doesn't need to be given through a game or through a video or anything like that. It can all happen in the context of regular discipleship as you walk alongside the road, as you sit down, as you wake up, and as you lie down at night.
Go ahead.
No, I just am thinking about this is that as you're saying that from Deuteronomy 6, let's be cognizant of the reality that technology of this type of interacting with screens, the research says it causes people to learn differently. It changes our brain development. I would say, Krista, and again, not necessarily everybody else's opinions, but I would say that interacting with the screen and getting the content and the information and the learning from the screen, it shapes your brain differently. Your brain processes it differently than simply writing it out and interacting with a physical book. And this has implications for our faith, physical Bibles, learning how to write and interact with our physical Bibles is not the same as reading it on an app. And we have to understand that, again, we're not merely talking about content. It's the act of how you're obtaining the information and how it's shaping the brain. And especially in a child where the brain development is still so malleable that this is like harming the child's development. Go outside, build a swing, put together a kludgy playhouse, get a cardboard box, do something different that is more in line with how God has designed our brains. God has not designed our brains to interact with all of these devices all the time for 9 hours a day. That has not been in the history of civilization, how we do things. I'm of the strong opinion you do not need these devices in order to have a good education. All right, go.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry.
This question's from Elaine, and she says, how can you teach and how young of a kid can learn to self-limit?
That's a good one. Because she was saying, her kids don't throw a fit.
Yeah.
If she tells them to get off the device.
But they won't necessarily opt out if she doesn't.
Yeah.
So self-control is not only something that we can develop naturally through experience, but it is also, we know, a fruit of the Spirit. But our self-control has a limited capacity. We can only exert so much self-control. Research has shown naturally through our mind, body, heart, soul, everything, as far as scientific research goes. Now, of course, as we're believers, we have the Holy Spirit in us. We can exert a lot more self-control. But when you're thinking of a child who isn't necessarily a believer yet or is not redeemed, they don't have the Holy Spirit, and we're expecting them to self-regulate on something that is by design, trying to engage them every single second and keep them engaged longer and longer and longer. That's impossible. That's an impossible task for a child. They would never be able to really, really self-limit in the regard that I think parents would like them to.
That's such a great point.
They need the limits put on them.
A great point.
Continue.
No, I just think it's just yes and amen. Okay, so here's my thought about devices and this whole age appropriate thing, like, am I the only one that's noticed, like, once you give a kid a device, once you
Oh, I know what you're going to say. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
once you introduce it into the home,
Yeah.
it's never the same.
Never the same.
Once
And
you
then it's a
don't go back.
constant negotiation
Yep.
where the kid's wanting to pull you in this way, and can I get more and more, and can I do this, and you know, there's 5 minutes of downtime, can I do that, and there's always this negotiation. Biggest parenting regret that I have is doing that too early
Yep.
with one of our kids.
Yeah.
Now, something we did, I do not regret, that I think was good, was having not letting them have devices in their rooms at night. They didn't have any personal devices in their rooms at all. So we didn't have computers in the room. They didn't have TVs in their room. So there was none of this business of like having the door closed with the device. Because I cannot tell you how many letters we've gotten at the ministry where the story goes like this. Our kid has a computer or mobile device or whatever, and they're always 14 or 15, it seems like, when this happens. And they're in their room a lot, and the door's closed, and yada, 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 now they're non-binary. Or yada, 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 now we got corn issues. And it's like, you know, like, don't do that. But yeah, it's a tough issue because we want to give our child good things, and we want to help our children, you know, feel like they belong. And that was a big conversation in our house. I feel like I don't belong to my friend group because I don't have this device.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about any of those 45 issues I've just raised?
Well, no, it's absolutely true. Once you go smartphone, you don't go back. Once you or go tablet, if you even just started during the toddler years, you don't go back. You don't change it. And so that's why we stand by limit, delay and limit. You delay access to all of those things as long as absolutely possible. You set a goal when the children are young, or even right now, depending on wherever you're at as a parent right now, you set that goal and say, okay, I really don't want to allow, you know, the smartphone until high school, maybe, or I don't want to allow social media until 16 or 17. And you set that goal and you really strive to meet that goal. But if you're just kind of like, well, whenever they're ready, whenever I think that it's convenient, well, then you're just going to do it earlier. You have to really commit to it because you know the research and you know the data, and pray for the strength, because the children will try and wear you down with every single excuse. I did not allow social media before the age of 16. And I think I had one daughter who cried every single day. And in the end, she ended up writing like an essay that I included in the book. And I asked her, what is it like to be a high school student without social media? And she, in the end, said, everybody just wants to fit in. They do stuff that they regret. They all come to me because they know that I'm not going to spread it around because I don't have social media. And I'm like, what a brilliant reflection. The fact that she was actually a good friend because she didn't have that. And so there is blessing, there is fruit that can come from that delay and that feeling like I'm isolated and that no one, you know, accepts me and I don't have a part of a group, or I don't have an online identity. But there is much benefit and much fruit that the Lord can bring from that faithfulness that you show as a parent.
Guys,
Yeah.
we have to take our last break. We will be right back in a minute.
If you want to know the worth of a seminary, go take a look at their graduates. Our graduates are all over the world. Discipleship movements, it's heart-shaking, life-changing, and just mind-expanding of what God is doing.
You know, sometimes I really do have to pinch myself that what I get to do with the ministries at BTS, the engaging with the students and the impact that God uses us to have on the lives of our students, it's a pleasure, it's an honor, and it's a joy.
Jesus is still building his church. So we need to equip the pastor teachers who equip the saints. We need to equip the elders who shepherd the church. And I am grateful that Birmingham Theological Seminary is available to be a part of the expansion of the kingdom of God in these very crucial days.
And once again, if you would like to find out more information about our friends at Birmingham Theological Seminary, go to bts.education, and they have a lot of great programs and very affordable Zoom calls. So you don't have to live in Birmingham.
Yes. Yes.
All right, gals, I've talked a lot. I'm sorry. I said at the top, this is something I'm pretty passionate about.
Yes.
So Monique says we got time for one more question.
We're going to land this plane today. And we will not circle around.
It's not Black Church today.
You got that right. Not today. Okay, so I have 2 questions. One I was just, gonna wing. But what do you say to the naysayers, to the people who are like, look, you go ahead, that's for you, but I don't want my kid to feel awkward. I don't want my kid to be the one who is, the person who can't fit in. I don't want her to feel ostracized or him to feel ostracized. What do you say to that person who really just pushes back? Like, where would that either correction or encouragement come from?
Yeah, I think I would want to ask that parent, why are they fearing man? What I hear from that question and the pushback, I don't want my kid to feel awkward, I don't want him to be different, is I fear other people's opinions about how I'm raising my kids. And Proverbs says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all knowledge and wisdom. And that's where we should begin when we approach media and technology, is fearing him first. What is this going to do to my child's heart? What is this going to do to my heart as we engage in the content and the time that's spent on social media? And so I would push back and ask more questions about, why do people's opinions matter? Do they matter? Do they think about them a lot? And just kind of flesh that out, because it sounds like a fear of man problem, if I'm quite honest.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
In discipling your kid, you're gonna have to teach them. It's like, I'm old, I understand. My mother used to tell me, well, if all your little friends go jump off a bridge, are you gonna do that too? There's some resilience we have to build into our kids, that as a Christian we will be different, and we, as a Christian family, we will things working on that. And it's hard. Being a parent, when you're doing something different than your kids' peers, that takes some really stern stuff, and to stick it out day in and day out.
Yeah, I think the conversation that we talk a lot about, especially like on the family meeting, is, this idea of courage. How do we live courageously? How do we live differently? How do we live, in a Christ-like manner, bravely? That does call for us to be different. I think part of what we've talked about tonight is that there are times when a lot of parents, like, might not be a kid problem, it might be a parent problem.
Well,
that parents lack the courage. And so because they lack the courage and they don't want to be different, or they struggle with this being different, they also put that on their child more than their child may, even be adopting it themselves.
And I can't tell you how many times I've posted about this issue on social media, and parents come on and say, well, I need my kid to have a phone. It's convenient for me so that I can reach them. And I'm like, I'm not sure that that's the best thing for a first grader.
Well, we know someone who I think felt that they needed their child to have a phone, and they got them this, maybe it's called a Frog or something like that kind of phone, but it was like this, basically it didn't do anything. It didn't let you go online. It didn't let you do anything. You can make calls.
Yeah.
You could only program 6 people in the phone. And so, I feel like, I don't know if that's the best option, but it is an option when parents are like, I need my kid and I feel like that with my nephews. Like, how many crazy things happen at school? I would be the one to be like, here, you can have this Frog phone.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is like, Monique, one of the things we ask is that delay and limit. Delay as long as you possibly can and limit. And so that Frog phone is a great limit as best you. And what people want from brave parenting is they want and like they want rules. They want hard and fast rules. Like tell me what I should do and what I shouldn't
Right.
do. And
Yes.
I think that's a natural tendency for all of us in the sense that like we want the black and white and we want the rules kind of like the Old Testament, like live by these things or do these things and you will live. But we're taking it from a gospel approach from the New Testament and saying Christ has done these things, now go and live. And one of the things that's not being brought into the conversation when parents talk about media and technology is God. Like, what do we do with this stuff because of our union with Christ, because of our confidence in what he's done for us and who he has called us to be? And
We're called to go out and be separate.
Yeah.
We're not called to be a part of the world. I mean, how many different ways does God say that?
Right.
Is to be set apart and to be different. And so I mean, for any parent, if you're a Christian and you're saying, well, I just really need to have my kids have all these things, it's convenience. There's just this toxic belief that we need convenience.
Yeah.
And convenience is not biblical. It doesn't come from the gospel at all. And we're deceived. Many of us parents are very deceived by that lie.
But we have such rich doctrine in the church. That doctrine is teaching, and that should be teaching us how we engage with media and technology, how we engage with one another. And we're just not utilizing what God has given us so freely, and that is the knowledge of him that leads to godliness.
That's some good wisdom.
That is, and I was going to ask one more question, but I kind of feel like that was just
that
good.
was it.
That was like
it.
that. We on the runway now. Like we have landed that plane.
So I want to let everyone know once again about your ministry. Go to braveparenting.net. You guys do appearances, speaking. You have a podcast. You have a book. You also have these really cool like one sheets that are. Bob, could you scroll to the top for me real quick? The guides where you kind of equip parents on different types of technology and AI, chatbot, Bible chat, just all kinds of stuff. Even vape pens. You got a POV about that. All right.
Temu. Okay. I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe I need to be printing these out myself.
Theology of Temu. So go check them out, braveparenting.net. Anything that we've missed here about your ministry that you want to make sure that people know?
Well, we did just release a study guide. So it's small group curriculum. Everything is easier in community. And so we have a study guide and workbook for our book. And so if you in your church or your small group want to do that, it's a great way for believers to come alongside, parents to come alongside of one another and really develop this biblical approach to media and technology.
Mm-hmm.
And that's available through your website as well?
You can get it on the website. You can also get it on Amazon.
Awesome.
Great.
Awesome. Ladies, thank you so much for being here and for educating us and having this conversation. It's such an important conversation. I feel like I should thank you too. I mean, like I thought
that too. I was thinking I wanted to thank Krista.
Thank you very much for being here.
I'm sorry. I like I said at the top, I get very excited about this.
As do we. So it's great to have that camaraderie.
Yeah, we'll extend the invitation and come back on our podcast, and we'll let you kind of like a vent.
Yes. I just have this is my heart. I'm so heavy about these issues.
All right, ladies. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your time and your ministry and the wisdom that you guys have shared tonight and what's available on your website and all the work that has gone into creating those one sheets and the guides and the small group curriculum, all of it. Thank you. And everyone go check out Brave Parenting at braveparenting.net. Yep. All right, ladies. We'll see you later.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
So if people missed the website, I have Brave Parenting on our website as a link as one of our trusted resources so that people can find out more about that and ministries that we direct people to and have partnerships and friendships with. So if you missed any of their information or how to connect, just go to the CFB website, go to our special page there that we've got find trusted resources, Brave Parenting there.
Awesome.
So I wanted to mention in the chat, somebody was bringing up Jonathan Haidt's book, along these lines.
Anxious
generation.
Is it mind or generation?
No, anxious generation.
Generation. Yeah, I'm thinking of Queering Mind.
Yeah.
But yes.
So I've heard some good things about that book.
I have that book. Yes. What is it? That's by Haidt, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a secular book. I don't think he's a Christian, but
he also wrote another book that I read recently and he wrote it with a co-author. It was super good. Man, I wish I could pull it up, but yeah.
Okay,
he's a
Future
great author.
says, I support Krista's soapbox energy. Thank you. Let's see. EC says this is an important topic we need to be discussing and working through these days. Thank you to the gals, Chelsea and Ellie. That's awesome.
The Coddling of the American Mind.
That's
is the
the
book
other one
that I read.
Haidt
Yeah,
wrote. Yeah.
and he wrote it with a co-author, and that is a phenomenal book. So yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are gonna sign off. If you have not done so already, please consider joining our spring book clubs with the Center for Biblical Unity. I am going to be leading The Queering of the American Child. That book is just an awesome book, and it's an awesome opportunity to look at the intentionality behind some of the LGBTQ plus stuff that we see in our education system. What is going on with intentional queering? And we're looking at queering as a verb. And so, yes, I am excited about that. You can find out more information about all the books we are going to be reading through. We'll read through Walking in Unity again, through Natasha Crane's new book, and then When Culture Hates You, and then The Queering of the American Child. Go to centerforbiblicalunity.com and you'll be able to find our book groups there.
Thanks, everyone, for being here. And next week, we will be having, let me look real quick. What is next week?
I don't know.
What is the show next week? Next week, we are dark because you are out of town.
I am. I didn't know if we had something.
No.
You had something up your sleeve.
So we'll see you in 2 weeks with Melissa Doherty.
Yes. Oh, yes. It's going to be a good show.
All right. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.